Today's video is going to be all about my 2026 reading goals, and in particular I want to talk about some of the habits that I've picked up over the past 5 years of being on BookTube, because if you don't know, this year is the 5-year anniversary of when I started my BookTube channel, and as cheesy as this is going to sound, I have been reflecting quite a lot this year on how being part of this community has changed my reading. And I hope it goes without saying that if at any point in this video I describe something as being a bad habit, I'm not saying it's objectively a bad habit, I'm saying it's something that I don't want to do anymore. I'm going to try and keep this video low-key and casual, but I thought we could start with my overall reading goal, because this is something that I set on Goodreads every year. In fact, I think I've been on Goodreads for longer than I've been on BookTube. I think I got my Goodreads account about 10 years ago, and in the early days I was getting back into reading for the first time properly as an adult, and I wanted to make it a habit again. I wanted to consistently read one book a week, maybe even less than that. The first few years of being on Goodreads, I set my goal to about 50 books, and I would never reach that. I think the closest I got was about 42, but I didn't see that as a failure because it wasn't like I was aiming for a particular number. Whenever I set my reading goal, I think of it in terms of what that means per month or per week. For the past 5 years since being on BookTube, I've set my goal as 100 books, which in my brain means consistently finishing 2 books a week, or 1 physical book and 1 audiobook, because when I discovered BookTube, that was the first time when I was really getting into audiobooks as well. This is, I think, the first year where I'm potentially not going to read 100 books. I'm filming this at the start of December, and I think I'm currently on about 92 or 93. 100 books is no longer reflective of what I want my reading to look like, because this year I have been reading a very long series. This here is the series in question. That was my phone. This is the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson. This is only the first 8 books. These are the 8 books that I've read in this series this year. Just going to put that down. Some of these books are over 1,000 pages, and they've taken me about 2 to 3 weeks to read. 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have touched this series with a barge pole. I used to actively avoid any books that were over about 500 or 600 pages, and a lot of that was because of making content. I used to make a lot more reading vlogs than I do now, and I had this thing in my head where if I was filming a reading vlog for longer than a week or 10 days, then I would start to get bored with that reading vlog. I'd feel like I had to speed up what I was reading in order to get the vlog live. I think I've made about 16 or 17 reading vlogs this year. It's definitely less than 20, and most of those reading vlogs I filmed over about 3, sometimes even 4 weeks, sometimes even longer. What I'm trying to say with this ramble is that I am no longer scared of reading long series. I'm no longer scared of reading long books, and I no longer want to avoid reading books that I'm genuinely interested in just because they're longer, and it means that I'm not going to film a reading vlog while I'm focusing on those books. Another great example is the Round of the Outling series by Robin Hobb, which you may just be able to see in the background. This is one of my favourite series of all time. It took me about 2 years to finish, and I read the first book physically. Let me just grab it. This is one of the shortest books in the series. It is less than 400 pages. However, this took me quite a while to read, relatively speaking. I think it took me about a week, and I can remember thinking, it's taken me too long to read this book, I need to speed it up. I can remember feeling like I needed to switch to the audiobook in order to get through this series quicker, or to free up my physical reading time, because again, that's something that I do now, is I separate my physical reading from my audiobook listening. After this first book, I read the rest of this series on audio, and then I also read most of the other books in the series via audio, except for the final trilogy, which I couldn't find the audiobook, so I had to read them physically. I say had to, I was happy to read them physically by that point, because I think in the 2 years since I started this series, my reading did start to change a little bit. I started to, like I'm doing right now, I started to reflect on certain habits that I picked up. But I know that I definitely experience books differently when I listen to them via audio versus when I read them with my eyeballs. All of this rambling is to say that I am thinking about lowering my reading goal for 2026 to 75 books is what I'm thinking, because 50 feels too low. I feel like I can easily finish one book a week. However, what I'm thinking, because this is the way that my brain works, I'm thinking one book a week plus one extra book every other week. I think that's a bit more reflective of what my reading is like, because sometimes it will take me 3 weeks to finish a book, but then other times I will read like 2 books in a weekend. In fact, I read a book last night in one sitting. There are some longer series on my radar for next year, and I'm really hoping that by lowering this goal, it means that I'm going to feel less guilt when it is taking me that little bit longer to finish a book. I don't want to be avoiding long books when some of my favourite series, like The Realm of the Outlands, those books are relatively long. I think some of the later books in the series are about 800 or 900 pages. Let's move on and talk about series. So earlier this year, I made a video where I talked about 10 series that I wanted to prioritise in 2025. And I didn't think I'd done too badly. Out of the 10 series, I've finished or I've made progress in 4, which leaves 6 series that I haven't touched. So actually, yeah, that's not the best, is it? But those series will roll over into next year, and I'm trying to be more realistic about how many series I can juggle at one time. Again, in my early days of being on BookTube, I started so many series, and unless I gave a book, like with the first book in a series, 5 stars, I never continued. I want to clarify once again that this was mostly due to content. I found that if I was talking about a sequel in a vlog, even if I was talking about it in a spoiler-free way, if someone hadn't read the first book, then they weren't interested in hearing me talk about a sequel, and those who had read the series wanted spoilery thoughts, and so I've tried to bear that in mind when I'm working out content. I've done a lot more spoilery vlogs, and obviously the audience for those is much narrower, but I love talking spoilers, and it's just a whole different audience. I love watching people talk spoilers about series and books that I've read, and so I think changing my mindset and thinking, how can I still talk about this in a video? Also, I don't have to talk about every book that I read. I don't have to talk about every series that I read. If I finish a series, then there's more content that I can make because I can do a series review and people are more likely to watch those. So I just wanted to clarify that because I don't think I did a good job of explaining it in the video. I do think I need to be more realistic about what I can handle. For example, if I decide to start The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson next year, I know that each of those books is probably going to take me about 2 or 3 weeks to read each one. If I read one book a month, then that's essentially 4 months where I'm probably going to read a few shorter books in between. But I'm not going to be able to tackle any other series unless I listen to the audiobooks. But do you see what I'm saying? I don't know whether I'm making any sense here, but I'm trying to think of things in a mathematical way. There's only so many hours that I can read a day, and I don't want to, like I've said, I don't want to feel like I'm rushing myself. I'm not going to make a video next year with a whole bunch of new series that I want to prioritise because I'm just going to roll over series from last year. If you are curious what those series are, A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I read the first book years ago, and it's one where I think there's potential for me to love future books, especially because Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab was one of my favourite books of this year. The First Law Universe by Jo Abercrombie. I read the first trilogy a couple of years ago, and then I read the first standalone, and then I got halfway through The Heroes and DNF'd it and never returned to it. But I have all of the audiobooks because I think I would enjoy that series more if I did an immersion read. Or it could be because a few years ago I had this mentality of wanting to get through books quicker, and those books I find are quite slow. Final Strife by Sarah Al-Arifi I've heard amazing things about, and I have read Feybound and Cursebound by this author, and I could see potential. I think I'm going to really like this series based on how I felt about Sarah Al-Arifi's writing. 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. I can't remember the name of this series actually. I think that's the name of the first book. But N.K. Jemisin, one of my favourite authors. I loved the Broken Earth trilogy. I loved the Cities duology, The City We Became and the sequel, incredible, and I really want to read more of her books. Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent, I've heard amazing things about, and I know that I like Carissa Broadbent's writing because I like the Crowns of Neaxia books, apart from the last book, but we're not going to talk about that. That was a bit of a disappointment, but I've liked everything else that I've read by Carissa Broadbent, so I think there's potential for me to really love that. The Jasmine Throne is one that kept coming up over and over again with people who love the same types of fantasy that I do, so I need to prioritise it. A goal that I've had for the past few years that I want to continue into next year is making sure that I read more books from my TBR than I'm adding to my TBR. I went through a bit of a phase a few years ago where every single month I was looking through the 99p Kindle deals and I was just buying about 5 or 6 every month, and I told myself, oh, it's fine because it's 99p per book. And if you do that 100 times and you end up with over 100 unread books on your Kindle, that's a year's worth of reading, and that doesn't take into account new releases. And the longer that a book stays on my TBR, the less enthusiastic I feel to read it. I don't think there's actually any books on my TBR that I would want to unhaul. I don't think I need to do that. I think I just need to make sure that I'm getting through my backlist. When I first got my Kindle, I used to buy a book and read it straight away. Like, I would only buy a book if I was planning on picking it up that very second. I can't remember the last time I bought a book and read it immediately. Typically, that is not the norm. I tend to let books linger on my TBR for years, and I don't want to do that anymore. I have been doing a project over the past few months, TBR 100, where I've been trying to get my Kindle TBR below 100 books before the end of the year, and I want it to stay below 100 books. I think about 50 books is a good number to aim for, especially because some of the books that I have on my Kindle are classics that I got when I first got my Kindle, and I think they were on offer. I think they might have even been free. With classics, I know that I'll get to them eventually. I'm not in any rush to read them because it doesn't really matter at what point in my life I pick them up. This year, I have read 56 books from my owned TBR, and I've added 32 books to my TBR, which means I'm currently at negative 25 at the time of filming this. And I don't think that's too bad, considering at the start of the year, I think my unread TBR was sitting at around 150. I think what's really going to help is I've cancelled my Fairy Loot subscription. And so next year, I think I want to go the whole year without spontaneously signing up to a book subscription, because I know the way that I am as a reader right now, I am not getting to subscription books. I don't read physically anymore. I think I've talked about this before, but I have chronic pain in my back as well as my neck and shoulders, and I do stuff to manage it, but reading physically is not comfortable with me, or at least holding a physical book is not comfortable for me. I end up feeling in a lot of pain. So I tend to read on my Kindle because I have a Kindle stand and I have one of those remote controls, so I can put my Kindle, I can position it exactly where it's comfortable. It's wonderful. So that going forward means that I need to think about the books that I'm buying physically. I think I'm still going to want trophy copies of some of my favourite books, but I don't need to buy books randomly just for the sake of it, especially if they're going to sit on my TBR for years and years and years, because that is what I'm like. I haven't used my library as much this year because of not being able to read physically, but I would like to remember to use the audiobook service for my library, because every so often they do have books that I'm interested in, they have new releases. This next section, I wanted to talk a little bit about genres and the genres that I want to focus on in 2026. I think my most read genres are always going to be fantasy and thrillers. That's not going to change. For 2025, I actually set a goal that I wanted to focus on finding some 5-star romances, and I don't feel like I've really done that. I think I've read some that I've enjoyed kind of, but I've been reading a lot less romance this year. I think I need to look into more literary romances, or romances that feel unique, because that's something that I struggled with a few years ago with thrillers. I set myself a goal a couple of years ago where I wanted to rediscover my love of thrillers, and I managed it. I tried thrillers across different subcategories, and I worked out that I really like crime thrillers. I really like police procedurals. I really like suspense thrillers and sci-fi thrillers. Speaking of which, I would love to read more sci-fi next year. I love sci-fi when I read it, but I feel like I'm easily pleased with sci-fi because I just haven't read that much. I really like near future sci-fi, but I've also been getting into space operas. I read the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers this year, or at least the first 3 books. Loved them. So I want more sci-fi in my life. If you have any sci-fi recommendations for books that you think I would enjoy, then let me know in the comments. I have some on my TBR and I really want to try and prioritise them. It's getting a little bit dark outside, but hopefully the lighting still looks okay. There's only one more thing that I wanted to talk about in this video, and that is my channel goals. I don't ever set subscriber goals or anything like that because because I can't control it. I can't control if people choose to watch my videos. I can't control if people choose to subscribe. Obviously, I'm very grateful to everyone who does, but once I upload a video and put it out there into the world, I can't control what happens after that. So that's why I don't tend to set subscriber goals. However, this year my channel reached monetization literally 2 weeks before my 5-year anniversary of being on BookTube. I haven't received a payout yet. If you don't know, basically the way that payments work with YouTube, you don't get paid until you reach a certain threshold. Anything that I do make from YouTube, I want to reinvest into this channel, whether that's by getting a new microphone or getting new lights. I want to upgrade my equipment at some point and maybe get a new vlogging camera as well, because me and Sam have a few exciting trips for next year where it would be really beneficial to have a slightly smaller camera. I just love filming travel vlogs as well as reading vlogs. I love having those memories captured. I'm rambling when I need to be wrapping up this video, so thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments some of your goals for 2026. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.